Well, it has been a day and a half since I've done one of these. But do not worry, we are getting back into the swing of things. I always say that that's one of the most important things of being an artist and kind of pursuing creative endeavors is always being able to jump right back into it. But enough about that. We're getting back into talking about perspective once again. The footage that you're watching right now was actually recorded very, very shortly after I recorded that first part. So just to give you a little bit of... There goes my cuckoo clock. Just to give you a little bit of context, that's the footage that you're watching right now. It was recorded a little bit after the first video that you saw. But as far as my studies have gone, I have watched up until episode 5 of Modern Day James's perspective thing. But it's kind of funny that I noticed something kind of taking place a little bit while I was doing these studies and while I'm doing these lessons. It's the most ridiculous thing, but it's it's almost like, and it feels so dumb saying it because it makes so much sense, but it feels like going back and repeatedly doing these lessons has really kind of reinforced my understanding of 3D space. I mean, of course, that's why they tell you to do it. That's why everyone tells you should learn perspective, you should go back to the basics, go back to the fundamentals, do all this stuff. And because it's supposed to help reinforce your understanding of 3D space on a 2D plane. And it's kind of funny to see and notice how there's a certain formula to it. There's a formula to all of this stuff. Like, formula is definitely the best word for it, because there's certain, the way lines kind of match up with each other, and the way they kind of, like, if you want something to be a proper cube, you'll understand how 90 degrees work, and how, like, yeah, just the different degrees that slowly kind of imprints itself on your brain. It's the most bizarre thing ever. I have an entire video planned where I'm specifically speaking about this concept, but I'm going to touch on it just a little bit here because I think it makes a lot of sense. I had this idea of the broader sense of art, kind of comparing it to the concepts of language. This is something that I've always kind of had in my head, but I'm once again being reminded by this concept, is that, like, anybody can pick up a pencil. Anybody can make a mark on a page, but it takes a certain understanding that how something specifically works in order to convey a message, to portray a message, convey a feeling or an emotion or shapes or characters to the viewer. It's basically the difference between picking up a pencil for the first time and making your marks on a piece of paper versus understanding how to use that same exact pencil to write letters. Using that same exact pencil to know how to write sentences, how to string them together to form paragraphs. And it's the comparisons to language are so wild. Like, this entire thing has just kind of been just like a big refresher in that sense. There are certain things that I literally just couldn't understand with perspective. I literally couldn't see. Now, this is almost embarrassing to say, but whenever I would draw a cube from the underside, like say you're underneath the cube and you're looking up at it, I literally couldn't understand how that cube would look from that angle. I guess more specifically, if I was doing the wireframe thing, you could see through the entire cube. Like, my brain just had trouble. It would twist it and bend it in a weird way that wasn't real. But I can see it now. Like, I can see how that just works. Like, I still struggle a little bit, but of course that's something that'll just come with practice. That's why they tell you just to practice, just to pick up the pencil and practice. Practice, 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 practice. One of my favorite clips that I'm always sharing with people is...
Got practice. Practice, 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 practice. Practice. And if you haven't practiced, you should be practicing. So keep practicing. It's the only way you're gonna get better. It's the only way you're gonna be number one. Number one in anything. You need practice, practice, practice.
But that clip, it's so true. It's so true that the only way you're gonna get better is if you practice. You just gotta practice, 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 practice.
Practice, 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 practice. Practice. And if you haven't practiced, you should be practicing. So keep practicing.
And that's a whole other video that I could make on talking about practice and how you can kind of... It's important to kind of distance yourself from your own work. A buddy of mine, I don't know if he wants me to call him out here, but I'll go ahead and keep him anonymous just in case. But a buddy of mine was having trouble with drawing a picture, and I'm sure this is a thing that a lot of people tend to struggle with, is not being able to get the results you want and just feeling frustrated and angry that you're not able to get those results. When I think there's a certain mindset that it's really important, especially for people who are still learning. It's important to understand that it's important for you to understand that the way your current skill set is right now isn't always going to be the way your skill set is going to be. Like, you're going to improve, you're going to get better, but the only thing that's separating you from getting to the point that you want to be is practice.
Practice, 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 practice.
The only way to get to where you want to be is putting in the effort to get to the point. But at the same time, I understand the frustration, because it's like you're constantly having to face your own fears. You have to kind of not get bogged down with it. You got to separate yourself from yourself, and it's the craziest idea. I'm just ranting about so many different things. I have so many different videos that I want to do, and I've been gone for a while, and I'm excited to come back, and I'm getting super sidetracked. Let me get back on topic. But we're talking about perspective. We're talking about perspective and how just that practice helps you understand how things move in 3D space. Like, I'm able to understand the rotating of objects just a little bit better. I've had a busy last few weeks and haven't been able to put as much of that practice in as I've wanted to, but even the amount of practice that I have done, finally sitting down to put in that time to understanding how vanishing points work, understanding how things rotate and how vanishing points move in 3D space, and how, like I mentioned earlier, there's a certain formula that you can help to understand, like, okay, if this block is moving in this specific way, then that will affect these blocks, that'll affect these vanishing points. And another analogy that I really like is comparing learning these basics to learning how to play a video game. I think I was talking with my buddy Noah about this. Was it me who came up with it, or was it him? I want to say that it's me, but I do apologize if I'm taking credit for this, Noah. But art and I guess just the creative anything that you're doing, it's a lot like playing video games. Like, learning the basics and learning the fundamentals to drawing. Think of that as knowing how to hold a controller. Knowing how to hold that controller in your hand, knowing how to maneuver your fingers around on that controller. At one point, knowing how this controller worked was a challenge. You you'd pick it up and you didn't know quite how it worked. You didn't know where the buttons were. You'd have to look down at your hands every now and then to see, like, okay, this is where the X is, this is where the trigger is, this is where the start and select are. And just as you play games, as you progressed, as you learned how to play these video games and grow in these skills, the fundamentals became less of a thing that you'd have to worry about. And I'm noticing that perspective is very much along that same kind of line. And I'm sure a lot of the other fundamentals are kind of along that same train of thought as well. Is that, like, it slowly just becomes a part of your thought. You don't have to think about it as much. Of course, I'm still in the learning stage, and there's still quite a bit that I'm learning myself. So there still is quite a bit of thought into it. But the very, very basics of vanishing points, I've kind of understand that now. Like, I know how things kind of go off into the horizon. I understand how that stuff kind of works. And just having that reminder is, like, it's super interesting just to just to see all this stuff kind of unfolding right in front of me. Now, that doesn't mean I necessarily like perspective. I still hate perspective. Oh my god. There's actually one little clip that increased my dislike for perspective infinitely, and this is something that I'm really, really struggling with. And I was in a stream with my buddy Jack. Is it JackTheUndying or JackTheUndying? JackTheUndying, there you go. I'll leave a link to his stuff in the description where you guys can check him out. But he was kind enough to do a stream where he asked people if they were struggling with anything specifically, if he could help us. And I brought up the perspective thing, and he explained why my shapes tend to fall apart and while I'm following all these little rules and rule sets and things. And he completely introduced me to the concept of the cone of vision. That's what it was. He completely introduced me to the concept of the cone of vision, and it's so far out of my understanding right now. It took something that was already complicated and, like, double complicated it. But it's good to know that this concept exists, but at the same time, I fundamentally hate who Jack is as a person for ruining my brain with these new concepts. Actually, I'll go ahead and include a clip of Jack explaining that to you. There's no way I could explain it as well as he does. Thank you very much again, Jack, for letting me include this clip in this video.
Okay, so you want to know why it's a little off? Because this is actually one of the most complicated things. It looks a little off just because of the vanishing points being too close together, right? So there is an area of distortion between vanishing points, right? Called a cone of vision, right? So let me copy the image, paste it into here. Okay. So a cone of vision, right, is basically just something that tells you anything outside of this area is going to be distorted, right? So if we take this and let's say it's perfectly vertical, so we're going to say that the viewer is standing here, right? So the station point is going to drop down to, let's say, right here, right? We're going to say that this is a station point, right? And we're going to have a 90-degree cone of vision, right? So we are going to take a right angle, right, from this, right? It is fisheye, right? So we're going to take a right angle right? And the reason why I dropped it down to here is because I figured it would hit the vanishing points. So this is a right angle for a 90-degree cone of vision where the vanishing points would hit, right? So the vanishing points hit here. This is a right angle, right? The cone of vision is going to be anything on the inside of a circle that goes with the radius being this, right? Radius being this. So anything on the inside of here, right, this area, is not going to be distorted, right? Anything on the outside of that area will be distorted, right? So let's do the same box that you have on the inside of this area and see how it changes. So we're going to take a line from there, and then we're going to take a perfectly vertical vanishing point like you have, another line from there, right? And then opposite side, again, another line, and a perfectly vertical vanishing point, perfectly vertical vanishing point. A final line right over here. I can't do things. Another final line. And then last but not least, we're going to take black and we're just going to outline this. So you can see it looks, yeah, I know, right? Trust me, I wasn't kidding when I said art was hard. Like, this is how you draw a box, Staggy. A box. Think about how much infinitely more complicated everything else is. So, as you can see, right, it looks undistorted. But if I were to take another one, let's take red, and let's make one outside of there. And then it looks distorted. What have you done? Hey, it's interesting. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, in a weird way you can take an interest to, but it's like...
No, I don't take an interest to it, Jack! And that's it. The cone of vision. What an insane concept that I had no idea even existed. But, you know, like, at the same time, as frustrated as it makes me, it at least lets me know, like, you know, it lets me know what's going on. Like, I've always noticed that my shapes looked a little off, and I was following these rules and things, and I didn't quite understand what was going on. And apparently, modern day James does talk a little bit about that in the later parts that I have yet got to, but it was super nice of Jack to, you know, let me know and explain that whole concept to me. So thank you again for that, man. I really do appreciate it. He's a super swell guy who definitely a few steps ahead of me in the art journey, and I always appreciate the tips that he gives me. It's always very helpful. I appreciate the tips anybody gives me. I could go through a whole list of people that have helped me along the way. Like, thank you so much, everybody. But the journey continues, guys. The journey continues. I'm gonna keep on fighting this perspective. I'm gonna keep it on. Hopefully we'll get I mean it this time. We're gonna do one video a week here on this YouTube channel. That's currently my goal, is to get at least one video a week. Give you guys a little bit of an update on my journey through the arts. I got a lot of plans, guys. I got a lot of plans. And that's my 4 o'clock alarm. Everything's going off. But I think that's going to be the end of this video, guys. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about perspective. We're still doing the perspective journey. I'm still pushing through. I'm fighting this perspective. I'm slowly figuring it out, but I still not the biggest fan. I'm still very glad that I have taken the time to to at least figure this stuff out. It's a very direct focus that I'm doing. I'm trying to hone in and get it. Get that perspective. Knock it out. Knock it out. I'm tired of perspective being one of the big issues that come between what it is that I want to make and the final drawing that I do. And like I'm sick of it. I'm frustrated. I hate it. I hate it. And thanks to Jack, I hate it even more. As always, I encourage you to get out there and pull out a piece of paper and do yourself a little bit of a drawing yourself. And yeah, well, we could all improve in this art journey together, guys. I very much believe that the creative journey is something that we're all part of, and that we can all kind of get better together and grow as artists together. So, you know, I encourage you to pick up a pencil. If you haven't started, like, why not start now, you know? Like, it's all about that. It's all about that focus. It's all about that slow journey. It's gonna be a slow journey, but I think it'll be worth it in the end. Definitely think it'll be worth it in the end. But that's gonna be the end of the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give a like. If you're also engaged in your own artistic journey, feel free to let me know in the description. Perspective. That's still where my focus is. We're pulling it back. This March, we're pulling everything back. Back to the basics. Back to the basics. But this time, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. So I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you very much again for watching. I've been Doggy's Art. Keep up your studies, guys. Keep up your studies. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Oh, that was fun, but it was a lot of perspective talk, and it makes my head hurt. Trust me, you're not alone in the perspective just killing you apart.